There is no useless experience, as read by the author. Lesson 3. The start of something is everything. Be cognizant of those moments and start well. The following words were said by the 80s legendary track and field athlete Carl Lewis, who is a 9-time Olympic gold medalist. He was dominant in the 100 and 200 meter races and a master triple jump specialist with a record standing since 1984. He also came second in numerous races. The way one starts is very important. A bad start can impact the first 10 steps of the race. By that time, you could have lost the race just because you can never catch up. The manner in which you begin a project, a business, a race, a relationship, or even a job has a direct and indirect impact on the ease of your progress, the success of the venture, and the trajectory of the journey in whatever you embark on. It was raining on the day I got my visa to the United States of America. I remember it vividly because I walked out of the US Embassy and let it rain on my face as I looked up to the sky in excitement and glee. It was the 13th of October 1999. The lead up to the day had been the culmination of many wrong turns. I had had a failed college start at Kenya Medical Training College in Nairobi that had seen me become a student of clinical medicine for a year before I dropped out. Then I followed that with a short 6-month stint at the Institute of Shipping Management. I had also dropped out after a month's stint at the Kenya Institute of Management. This had caused a serious altercation with my father, whom we referred to as Saddam, over my life's choices, as I had squandered the school fees for the course and never attended more than a week's classes. So this visa presented me with a new and fresh opportunity that I badly needed to inject into my floundering life. I had applied for it after my sister pressured and cajoled me into applying for a position at the Washburn University in Kansas, where I was going to study sports medicine. Though I didn't know what sports medicine was, I applied. When I got the letter of acceptance from the university and the subsequent visa appointment, I was happy. However, it was nothing compared to the feeling of elation I had when I actually got permission by way of the visa to enter the famed USA. This was my first real accomplishment at anything after my high school completion. The American agent at the embassy had simply asked me what sports medicine was and why I couldn't do it in Kenya. Luckily, I had read up on it and explained in detail what it was, and also that it wasn't locally available in our universities. At that time, the course was not offered in Kenya. She then asked me what sport I liked, and I said swimming. She asked which strokes I was good at, and I named all the strokes perfectly before settling on telling her my favorite was freestyle, or crawl, as it was informally referred to. With a satisfied look, the lady told me to come for my visa the next day. I could have hugged her were it not for the plexiglass between us. The next day, armed with my visa in hand, I headed straight to Eldoret and showed it to my parents. Mom was just about as happy as I was. Saddam was, however, gruff. "Well, you better behave over there," he said. "Those Americans have no problem jailing wayward Africans." I didn't think much of it, as I was used to his jibes and understood it was mainly because of my many false starts. However, he wasn't going to rain on my parade. I was about to go international. Shortly thereafter, a fundraiser was organized, prayer sessions were held, and on the 29th of November that year, I took off aboard an Air France flight to Paris and then connected to Atlanta to begin my American journey. It wasn't without drama, as you can imagine. On the day I was to take off, my then sidekick Herbert and I went to downtown Nairobi to have one last throwdown. I had already bid farewell to my Eldoret buddies the day before. They had escorted me to the newly built Eldoret International Airport and seen me off from the waving bay with pomp and flair. My parents figured it would be a good orientation to put me on a short flight for the experience before I boarded the bigger bird the following day. I recall on that tiny Aero Kenya flight to the city, I was seated next to Honorable Professor Margaret Kamar, At the time I met her on my flight to Nairobi, she was lecturing at Chepkoilel campus in Eldoret and was also a family friend. She gave me invaluable advice about life abroad, advice that I sadly did not utilize very well. The day after my arrival in the city, I took to gallivanting all over the city streets with my best bud, Herbert Karani. We stopped by Longonot Place at my father's pal, Samuel Chepkonga's office, who had just been appointed as the Director General at the Communication Commission of Kenya, CCK. He had just returned from a trip abroad and gave me some pocket money in dollars. He also had plenty of advice about life abroad, which I was not paying attention to because those dollars I was holding were the first ones I had ever seen in my life. We left his office, already intoxicated by our newfound wealth. In the excitement, we decided to have a few drinks in the afternoon before my flight later in the evening. Buoyed by the feeling of making it and the sheer euphoria of leaving the country, I tried out some cocktails I had never taken before. I wasn't prepared for the effects, as the alcoholic content was quite high, and before I knew it, I felt like I was already flying. It was a costly mistake. That evening, as I packed my bags in preparation for takeoff, at Uncle Ezekiel Libamira's house, or Uncle Zaki as he is often called, I was drunk and it was visible. The trip almost ended right there, and then, as Saddam declared, there wasn't going to be a flight that day, or any other day for that matter. It took the intervention of Uncle Zaki and another gentleman, Fred Obai, now known as Pastor Obai, to calm him down. I was instructed to drink copious amounts of water to reduce my inebriation, and although it somehow worked, I was still quite intoxicated at the airport. That was how I made the flight, taking off into the skies at 2200 hours, leaving Herbert holding the short end of the stick in the trail of scandal and shame behind me, as every single person who had gathered to see me off knew about what had happened. I don't remember much about that flight to Paris. I only woke up to the announcement that we were landing at the Charles de Gaulle airport. It was on the next connection flight that I was actually able to get my bearing. The first thing that stood out to me was that now I had become a minority in my black skin. The flight was uneventful, and I landed in America on the 30th of November, 1999. I made the last connection flight to Kansas and arrived to the reception of my exhausted but teary-eyed sister, who had had no idea if I would make it, given my earlier infractions. She had been told in detail about what had transpired prior to my departure. Mobile devices were still a preserve of the rich then, and so my entire journey was unknown to those who had sent me off. It didn't matter to me then. I was in America. I didn't know it then, but the screw-up had already happened right at the start. Strive to start well, in as far as it is within your power. Determine within yourself to start in a good way. It will have an impact on the outcome.